Hi friends, I'm Scot Giles and welcome to PowerTalk, my podcast here on Facebook Live and YouTube. I cover topics related to hypno-coaching, spirituality, and the hypnotic arts and sciences generally. If you'd like to know more about my professional work, and I hope you do, check out my website, which I'll tag at the end of this video. Today I want to talk about one of the newest buzzwords in the canon of personal productivity, essentialism. This is based on a new book titled Essentialism, a disciplined pursuit of less by Greg McKoewn. My personal temperament in matters of productivity is toward minimalism, which I defined as having what you need in the best quality you can afford, but only what you need. I hate clutter and regard its presence not just as a sign of disorganization, but that it is also an energy thief that demotivates and distracts us from what is really good, true, and beautiful in life. Now, in the literature of productivity, there is something called the Pareto principle, first articulated in the 1790s by Vilfredo Pareto. It's sometimes referred to as the 80-20 rule. It states that 80% of the benefit you receive from something comes from about 20% of the effort. That means that most of us could ditch 80% of what we do and still be about as productive, wealthy, and effective as we are now. In my experience, this rule holds up. When I was a parish minister, I noticed that 80% of the hassles I had to deal with came from about 20% of the congregation. Mostly people who just enjoyed complaining and whom no one could make happy. 80% of the funds were donated by 20% of the congregation, and so on. Basically, the idea of essentialism is to be strict about remembering the Pareto principle. The author of the book cites the old German saying, weniger aber besser, or less but better. Or as he phrases it, don't major in minor activities. If you can distinguish the stuff in your life and figure out what is most important, you will do far better than you would otherwise. It's always better to be intentional about how you design your life than just doing things by default. But the reality is that most people just do things by default. We do what we were trained to do instead of asking if maybe there's a better way. We skip over new ideas rather than give them a hard look to see if maybe there's something there that we've been missing. Now, there isn't a whole lot in McKeown's concept of essentialism that is new. As I said, the Pareto principle has been around since the 18th century. What I found really helpful, though, was the corrective point he makes about personal productivity, that the goal isn't to get more things done. Instead, the real goal is to get the right things done. Now, I found this clarification really insightful. When I work with people on their productivity, typically their goal is to accomplish more. Not just the A priorities, but the B priorities, the C's, the D's, and the E priorities as well. And this was the problem that I came to have with the getting things done system of time management from time management guru David Allen that I used for decades. And I like the system. It's based on a series of lists that are organized around context, where you would have to be able to do the items on that list. For example, there's no point in looking at your list of phone calls to return if you don't have a phone available or you're somewhere that will not allow you to make calls. But the problem I came to have with the Getting Things Done system is that the task lists are infinite. But while the task lists are infinite, the calendar is not. You can end up with these really huge lists of things to do when the reality is that there will never be time to get them done unless you do them in a half-assed way. Now, David Allen's solution to this is to delegate, or drop tasks when the lists get too big. Well, fine, but I often found myself in a situation where there wasn't time to do the tasks, there was no one to delegate them to. I work in a two-person practice here, and as a parish minister, I either didn't have a staff or all staff time was spoken for, and if I dropped tasks, there might still be consequences, because in a parish church, everyone thinks that they're your boss and that their stuff is the most important. And that's where I found McKeown's ideas really helpful. One of his ideas that if a request to do something isn't a clear yes, because it's a match to temperament, mission, priorities, if it's not a clear yes, then it is a clear no. His related point is that often it's far better to give people an unambiguous no to a request than to rather just put it on a list of things that you say you'll get to someday, but when in fact you're never really going to have time to do. As one consultant I worked with years ago explained, when you tell people you don't have time to do something they want, they don't believe you, because all they want is a little bite of your time. But the problem is that there are so many such people, all of whom want their bite, that it's like wading into a river full of the carnivorous piranha fish. Now, a piranha is not a big fish, and their mouths are not all that large, but if there are a whole lot of them, soon there's nothing left of you but a stain in the water. A clear no becomes a method of survival in such situations. A final image that occurred to me as I pondered all this comes from an article in the May 26, 2022 issue of The Atlantic magazine titled The Two Choices by Arthur Brooks. The article is actually about midlife crises, but the central notion applies here too. Brooks compares two art forms, painting versus sculpture. His point is that painting works by addition. You always want to have a bigger canvas to which you apply more and more paint to create the things you desire to create. That's like trying to keep track of and do everything. Whereas sculpture works by subtraction. You start with a block of stuff, and then you remove parts of it to disclose the image within that stuff that you wanted to distill and create. Essentialism is like sculpture. You want to get rid of everything extraneous and disclose the core things that are really the focus. That's a far better way to deal with productivity and time management than just creating systems, however efficient, for organizing all the things that you'll never get to. Hey, thank you for your time and attention today. I'll be back next week with another talk on a different subject, and I'd like to invite you to join me. It does help me if you let others know about my videos, so please like, share, and subscribe. In the meantime, stay well and stay safe.